Welcome to Sports Lab Overtime here on the eve of the Florida-Georgia game.
There we go.
I'm doing it for my buddy AJ Sheraton, who's joining me riding shotgun with me as we talk a little Georgia-Florida as we prepare for the game in Jacksonville. We're doing something pretty special. It is a all-time team. We'll call it a draft. That's what it feels like. AJ's a big Florida fan. I grew up on the other side of this rivalry. So we're gonna go through. We're gonna draft our teams, all-time teams. We're gonna ask you in the comments. I know it's gonna skew heavy in AJ's direction, just by nature of where we are recording from. But I'm excited to hear your thoughts, AJ. I'm gonna let you kick us off with this draft. Where are we going at the quarterback position for the University of Florida? I won't spoil anything. I think I know.
Before we get into it, it's the Florida-Georgia game. I just want to establish that real quick here before we get going. But it's also my favorite day of the year. If the weather in Jacksonville, which it looks like it will be, is anything like it is in Gainesville today, it is a perfect weekend for this Florida-Georgia game. Always my favorite day of the year. Get up there, just red and black on one side, blue and orange on the other. You come over the bridge, and the energy just feels different. Something about that day, just pure hatred. And I don't like to use that word, but these schools, these teams do not like each other. We're going to get to a few guys on this list who I know put some boomsticks on some dogs, and hopefully we see some of that this weekend from the Florida defense, and we'll see if we can go in there and play spoiler to the Bulldogs this weekend. But I'll jump in here and kick us off. I mean, there's only one option for quarterback at the University of Florida. There's, I guess you could say, a few more. Maybe Kyle Trask is my first pick, but no, he doesn't have a statue outside. It's Tim Tebow, the only option, national champion, two-time national champion, great guy, and after the year after the Gator stomp, was able to make Urban use all those timeouts to rub it in Georgia's face. Tim Tebow is my quarterback for the University of Florida.
It's a great pick. He's a friend of the program, sort of. I've talked to him a couple times, and he gave me a big hug a couple weeks ago when he was in town and told me that he was happy that I was working here at the University of Florida. I'm going to try to convert me over to Gator Nation. So, look, great pick. I don't know how you go anywhere else, but Tim.
Yours is a little tougher.
Mine, I think Georgia's a little tougher because I think there's a clear-cut most talented, Matthew Stafford. But then there's a guy that won 2 national championships, very similar to Tim Tebow, and it's Stetson Bennett. And that's who my pick's going to be. The mailman has a Disney-like story, to be honest with you, AJ. He went from walk-on to he got moved to – he went and did JUCO for a little bit, came back, wasn't the starter, depended on an injury to get him into the game. And I just think that when you really start to break it down, he's probably the most accomplished quarterback to ever go through the University of Georgia. Yeah. And, that says a lot. There's a lot of great quarterbacks in the history. You're talking Aaron Murray. You are talking Buck Bellew. You're talking clearly the man, Matthew Stafford, DJ Shockley, David Green. So there's a laundry list of good quarterbacks, very similar to Florida. I mean, Florida's got Kyle Trask, Chris Leak, Spurrier, Werfel. I mean, so there's definitely a list there as well. And look, Anthony Richardson, top 3 pick.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we'll see how Lagway pans out.
We'll see how Lagway pans out. So and
Jones.
Gunnar Stockton. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where, if we were to do this draft in 10 years, if it's going to be the same answers. But specifically, I'm going to go with Stetson, and then at running back, I think it gets easier for who to pick there, at least for the first one for Georgia. It's Herschel Walker.
Yeah,
he is arguably the greatest running back to ever play at the University of Georgia, one, but he also may be the greatest college running back of all time. I got
a guy on this list that might question that.
Well, at the college level.
Yes, this draft, by the way, is a college
yeah,
more.
So, yeah, definitely it's absolutely geared toward what they did in college. And some of them, I think, are more for the memories of what they did in this game specifically. Because there's at least one on this list that didn't have the greatest career at Georgia, but may have the greatest play in Georgia history. So we'll go down that path. But I'll go ahead and kick it back to you for your 2 running backs.
I mean, I want to preface, if people are watching this on the stream, I mean, I'm not the oldest. I'm not the most experienced with this rivalry. I'm a college student here, 5th-year senior, getting ready to graduate in December. But I did my research. I did my research for this draft. I'm not going to pick all my childhood players because a few of these guys are personal reasons, but at the running back position, I did my research. My first one, I'm going Rhett. I mean, over 4,000 rushing yards, 34 TDs. I mean, he was also good out of the backfield. He had over, I think, 1,000 career receiving yards as a running back. First team All-SEC. He was an All-American. 2 SEC championships. I mean, if you think of the Florida Gators and you think of running backs, there's another one on this list that I'm about to draft here in a second that kind of maybe pops in people's heads before Rhett, but I think I would be doing a disservice to this draft if I didn't take Rhett on my team. So he's my first running back. And moving on to my second, I mean, we said it's all about college, or mostly about college in this draft, but talk about the best running back in the NFL history. I mean, he's got the stats to back it up. It's Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith's my second running back. Sure, a few weeks ago he was wearing the maroon out in Texas A&M because his son plays for the team, and maybe some people wish he showed a little more Gator pride now, but Emmitt's a Gator, and he carried the legacy into the pros, and that's what makes school so awesome is you get these alumni, former players who go to the pros, and then that helps with recruiting. If you're recruiting a running back, you could say, look, Emmitt Smith was a Gator. Why would you not want to come be a running back at the University of Florida? And I think, guys, my 2 running backs, Rhett and Emmitt Smith, I'm pretty confident. And I know for your second pick, because off the top of my head, just in my lifetime, I could probably list off 5 or 6 that you could choose from. So I'm interested to see where you go, where your second running back, and where you kick off the receivers at also.
Yeah, this was a lot tougher, AJ, to try to pick the number 2 running back at Georgia because you got the Todd Gurley's, the Sony Michel's, Musa Smith,
Nick Chubb,
Terrell Davis, Garrison Hurst. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But it's the man you just said.
Wow.
It's Nick Chubb.
Okay.
Preface it as well. Like, I'm 31 years old, or I will be next week, and
he wants presents, by the way.
Anyway. But no, seriously, AJ, it's he ran with such a ferociousness to him. Trunk legs, I think, is the term for that guy. You can't arm tackle him and expect to get him down. But to me, it's about the foundation he laid for the Kirby Smart era at Georgia. He was one of the layovers from the Mark Richt era. That game where they played against Oklahoma, they
my
ran
favorite
them.
game ever.
Yeah, it's one of the best games of all time. He and Sony Michel ran them back into the game, which I'd never seen a team rely on a run game to come back from a couple touchdowns down. But that's exactly what those two did. Sony obviously had the big touchdown in overtime to win the game. But Nick Chubb had a lot of big runs in that one as well. But he also just had a great career at the University of Georgia. He did shred his knee against Tennessee. That was one of the most gruesome injuries.
And then again in the NFL.
And then again in the NFL.
Feel bad for him.
You feel for the guy. And look, he's, to me, the epitome of what a good Georgia football player is. And he's who I think comes to mind. Like I said, there's so many on that list that I could have gone with. But moving on to wide receiver. This was somewhat tough, but I'll go AJ Green.
Okay, I loved him. I loved him in fantasy when I was growing up. I mean, I don't know if it's because of my name, but I used to take him first overall in fantasy drafts growing up.
I mean, you got to, right? Like, he's got your name, but he's also, I mean, he was a dog, and not a Georgia Bulldog. He was a dog. But yeah, he was, the epitome of a really great wide receiver, all around player. Really, you go back and look at those teams in the middle of the Mark Richt era at Georgia. AJ Green is probably one of the best receivers to, maybe the best to ever come through the University of Georgia. Because, look, Georgia's argument for RBU, linebacker U, whatever, they don't really have that at the wide receiver position. It's just not. It's one of what you would consider one of their weaker positions, in my opinion. They've got some great guys. I mean, look, I'll get to a couple in a minute, but to me, AJ was the biggest slam dunk of the group.
Yeah, and I think my first pick here at receiver is also a slam dunk. I think when you think Gator football, you think the urban era, my childhood, kind of what I remember growing up is a slam dunk pick. And number 1 is Percy Harvin. I mean, he just electrified the swamp every time he stepped on it, even in the SEC championships. There was just something about watching him. He is the only wide receiver in 3 years. He only played 3 years to have over 1,500 rushing and receiving yards, which is crazy to think about because he was just an all-time gadget guy. You think of Kadarius Toney a little more recently, put that on steroids, and that's Percy Harvin. I mean, just can use him all over the field, jet sweeps, screens, and he's just going to make guys miss. He's going to go out there at any time he touched the ball, you thought it might be 6 points because it could have been with how good he was at the University of Florida. And then he didn't have the longest NFL career, but he made those spectacular plays when he was in the league. And with my second receiver, again, I did my research. I'm not sticking too recent. I'm going Ike Hilliard. He, again, only played 3 seasons at UF. He over 2,000 yards, just under 30 touchdowns. He had a 4-touchdown game, and I believe he's still top 10 in receiving yards at UF. I think he's like 7 or 8 in that range for all-time receiving yards here at UF. So when I think of receivers at the University of Florida, and I still got one more on this list that the third one was a little tough for me, and I know who I'm going to go to in a minute, but my first 2, Percy Harvin and Ike Hilliard, my 2 receivers for the all-time Florida Gators football team.
Look, Ike Hilliard's got a dish at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill for a reason. He is one of those Gators that you think of when you think of catching the football. I think it's the catch of the day or something like that over there at Spurrier's. If you haven't checked that out, definitely worth doing.
More of a brunch guy over there.
The
chicken and waffles.
You're talking my language. But seriously, he's one of the guys I remember growing up with in the NFL. I don't remember him as much at the University of Florida, because that's just not when the childhood when I started watching. It was more when he got to the NFL, and he was a great NFL receiver. And then, for me, these next 2 were tougher. I went with Terrance Edwards, which I think he finished his career with 1 additional touchdown than Ike.
You just had to throw that in there.
I had to throw it in there. But Terrance is a guy that kind of gets to be a little bit of a forgotten star because he never did go on to do much in the NFL. But Terrance is really part of the first Georgia team that made fall in love with college football. That was the early 2000s, 2001, 2002 era. And he was just the go-to receiver on that team. He was somebody you knew that if he got a hold of it, that Georgia had a chance to win. Him and Fred Gibson were 2 of the elite guys there. At the same time, with David Green, Musa Smith, you go back and it's a laundry list of the who's who for those guys.
And when he left the SEC, he held the career receiving yards record for the SEC. So I mean, you got a good pick there. You got a good pick. I'm not going to hate on it.
Yeah,
but you had to throw in the little jab at my pick also. That's what this weekend's all about. This weekend's going to be fun.
Just a tiny little jab. But no, and then the last one. This one might be a big jab for the Florida fans. Look, Hyde Ward did a lot of great things in the NFL. He was a guy that you had to at least think about for this pick. But I'm going to go with a guy that, like I said, this is strictly for the rivalry of it all. Didn't have the greatest career at Georgia, but he may have had the most important catch in the history of the program. It's Lindsay Scott. If you ever had the Larry Munson call, "Run, Lindsay, run!" It was iconic. It's an iconic call for this rivalry. He took the ball 92 yards, AJ, for a touchdown with very few seconds left in the game. Seals that for him. Georgia goes on to win the national championship. Can you imagine a 92-yard touchdown being what you had to have against Florida? If you don't get it, you don't win the national championship. That's pretty crazy to think about. I know you look back at plays throughout the season, you're like, if we didn't have that, you don't get there. But that's one you just, when you look back at this rivalry, it defined a season that really gave Georgia its only national championship for a very long time.
But that's what made this rivalry so great growing up, was this game in Jacksonville every year around Halloween decided the SEC East back when it was West, and that was what made it so awesome. It felt like whoever won in Jacksonville, I mean, we had a Mizzou sprinkled in there when I was growing up, but it seemed like whoever won in Jacksonville was going to go to Atlanta and play in the SEC championship when I'm growing up, and I'm waiting on those days to get back here, but this weekend's still going to be a little fun. I can't wait to throw some jabs at you when we take a 7-0 lead early, and that's the only time we score this weekend. But my third receiver nonetheless, Chris Doering, again, on SEC Network now for the younger fans who maybe don't know everything he did at UF. At the time, he set the single-season SEC record with 17 touchdown catches. He was on 3 SEC championship teams. He was a first-team All-SEC and a second-team All-American, I believe, when he was here at UF. So, I mean, you look back and you think of Gator greats at receiver. I think my 3, I don't think many people can complain about. I got 3 guys that kind of just embody the University of Florida. And when you think of the receiver position at UF, you think of those 3 guys. But now for the tight end, I do have to get a little more recent. I got to go into my bias a little bit. And it's just because that COVID year was so much Trask, Kadarius Toney, and then my pick at tight end, Kyle. Having the best year he's had, maybe because he is learning to block a little bit better, but in this game, in that COVID season, he did get knocked out on a cheap shot over the middle. It was a cheap shot. It was a cheap shot. He had to miss a few games, returned against Ole Miss, and lit them up too. And that team was just so much fun. Everyone, I mean, the fact as a tight end to be a consensus 5 pick is dang impressive. And I'm interested to see if you're tight. Everyone thought Kyle Pitts was put the gold jacket on him right away when he got drafted. But your tight end, if you're going with who I would go with, is probably already in the same boat the way his career started. So,
yeah, look, I was one of the ones that said go ahead and fit Kyle Pitts for the gold jacket. I'm a big believer in Kyle Pitts. I think he's an incredible talent, so great get there, AJ. And, yeah, I'm going recent as well. It's Brock Bowers. He was a do-it-all tight end. How many tight ends do you know that you could run jet sweep runs to, line him up and then have him come around, line him up at receiver and run tunnel screens to him? The only thing they really didn't do, if I remember right, is they didn't let him throw the football. But I mean,
they probably did at one point.
They probably did at one point, and I'm just not remembering it off the top of my head. He's that kind of player, though. That every time he touched the football, you thought there was something special that could happen, and a lot of times it did happen. I mean, he has one of the more iconic catches in this rivalry.
The tip down the sideline.
Tip down the sideline.
I'll never forget going to this game as a student, watching him. He's someone that you just look like when they're taking the field, you go, he's different. And then you watch him play, and I remember he scored a touchdown right in front of me, and I was like, whoa. Like, you could just – it's one of those you look at and you say he's different, and he's proven it so far in the NFL too.
Yeah, I think with him, it's one of those things where you look back at those Georgia national championship teams. He was the number one receiver in a lot of ways. A.D. Mitchell, you can make the argument for the first one, but for the second, I mean, I think it's hard not to think Brock Bowers was the number one receiving option on those teams. And when you win a couple national championships, that becomes a pretty hefty thing, especially because he was doing it as a freshman, a sophomore, and a junior.
He's doing it in Vegas now,
and he's doing it in Vegas now. And then for my first we're going straight to defensive line. Look, we thought about doing offensive line, but frankly, it's really tough to really narrow it down. There's a lot of great offensive linemen on both sides. The Pouncey brothers for them, the Stitchcombs over on Georgia. But there's, it's tough to narrow it down. So we went straight to defensive line. And I'm going to go with the man that maybe a lot of this generation knows for what he's done on the SEC Network, because he had a career in neck injury when he was with the Bengals. Like, he was on his way. I think he may have even won Rookie of the Year. Was on his way to a great career, but he had a great career at the University of Georgia. That's David Pollack.
Wow.
He really was the embodiment of a guy who was just smash mouth. Found ways to get to the quarterback, found ways to, disrupt any kind of game. The one that everybody remembers is the David Pollack interception / strip sack thing in the end zone against South Carolina. Will always go down as one of the best plays in Georgia history. But looking back, I mean, as a sophomore, he was All-American as a sophomore, was an All-American as a senior, won the Bernard. He had 2 interceptions, 4 interceptions total in his career, including a touchdown, which was the one in the end zone. But, I mean, that's for a defensive lineman to get 4 interceptions in his career is pretty crazy. So just, again, he's one of those guys that, it's hard not to think that he was maybe one of the best defensive players to ever come through Georgia. And I think a lot of people would put there as maybe the best in terms of just guys that you remember for being great at the University of Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, can't go wrong with that pick at all. And for my 2 defensive linemen, one I'm going a little more personal, and one I'm going back to the research. Jack Youngblood. You see the jersey everywhere. When I kind of got to UF, I was like, Jack Youngblood. Then I talked to my dad, and he's like, oh, he was a stud. And now it seems like every time I walk to class, I walk by the Bull Gator outside of Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. And I don't know if it's just when I look down every day, or something's telling me to look down every day, but I see that All-American brick outside the stadium for Jack Youngblood. I mean, he had 10 and 70. So just a game wrecker from everything I've heard from people, went back and read about I mean, he's someone that's just a staple of the University of Florida, and his name is up at the top of the stadium, and that his jersey is one that you see in the bookstore. It seems like every time you go into any store here in Gainesville, his jersey is in there. And then my second pick on the defensive line, and he's kind of a gadget. I didn't know if he was going to go in the linebacker defense. I'm putting him defensive line just because I like my linebackers. He was my favorite player growing up on those Muschamp defenses, Dante Fowler Jr. I'll never forget, third pick to the Jags in his draft. He kind of started the swagger at the draft with those spiky shoes. And I remember one of the first Florida State games I went to. My family's Knowles, so I grew up going to those games. Anytime he ended up on the Florida State sideline, he was talking smack. Just a player you didn't want to see if you had to play against him, but you just fell in love with him when he was on your team. So Dante Fowler Jr. and Jack Youngblood, my two defensive linemen.
Look, I love those picks. It's funny you mentioned seeing the bricks. Somehow I always look down at Brad Culpepper, and he was a guy that was on Survivor, the TV show. But for some reason, that's the one I end up picking out more often than not. But look, I'll go ahead and knock out my next pick. It's Richard Seymour, Hall of Famer in the NFL, but also was really great at the University of Georgia with over 220-something tackles, 20-something tackles for loss, 10 sacks. Again, we're trying not to go too heavy on what they did in the NFL, but it's hard to ignore. He was considered coming out of college, they weren't sure if he was going to be a great player for the Patriots. He was, and he was
on that first run with Brady in the Super Bowl, like his first run before he got good again, like because he went on 2 Super Bowl kind of runs, and he was part of that first one.
Yeah, I mean, and Richard Seymour was a big part of why they were able to go on those runs. And I'm going with him, and then over at the linebacker position. Could go with Roquan Smith. Yeah, I know it's a little more recent, but sideline to sideline, he's one of the most fierce defenders ever. Really one of those guys that kind of set the tone, similar to Nick Chubb, but on the defensive side of the ball for what the Kirby Smart era has been. I think he may have also been one of the holdovers from that Mark Richt era.
He kind of started the Kirby era.
But he started that Kirby era, and he really laid the foundation. And very similar, one of those guys you look back and you're like, I want to go play for the University of Georgia because I want to be the next Roquan. And then my other guys, I think, is similar in that Roquan where I looked and when I want to be that guy. So, but I'll let you hit us with your linebackers. I know one has got to be on there, AJ.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Patriots. Kind of when I was growing up, you kind of think of this guy and what he still means to the program now. He's still, I know, so grateful. He's talked about, I've had the chance to meet him a few times here in studio, of how grateful he is for letting Billy get him on the staff, but also still do school while he's here. He's back trying to get another degree at the University of Florida. It's Brandon Spikes. I mean, the hit in the Georgia game alone, when he came, was it Noshawn Moreno? When he came through the gap, I mean, just boom, and kind of set the tone for that game because it was after the Gator stomp.
And it took about 5 people to get him off of Noshawn.
I mean, he was just like that game, you could tell he came out with a purpose, and that's the best part about this game because now you know that one side of the stadium is riled up and ready to go, and it led to a blowout in this Florida-Georgia game, not Georgia-Florida. And then just still how he talks to the guys and he goes on the trips with the guys and shows them what it really means to be a Gator. I think Brandon's just to earn the respect for that. And then another one, I'm going to go a little more personal for me. He's a little bit more of a gadget player. Could have maybe put him at safety, but he had another hit in the Alabama game. I remember growing up, Keanu Neal. He bounced around the NFL. I think he was with the Falcons. And I remember he was a tone setter, someone you didn't want to see coming through the gap. So Brandon Spikes, Keanu Neal, 2 tone setters for my linebackers.
That's another set of solid pick. Spikes is that guy. A ton of respect for him. For my next linebacker, it's the play in the Florida game that really sets him apart. But he also finished top 10 in Heisman voting from the linebacker spot, and that's Jarvis Jones.
He had the hit with the fumble on Jordan Reed.
Yeah, he popped it loose. But he also 14.5 sacks as a junior, 13.5 as a sophomore. He had 19.5 tackles for a loss as a sophomore, 24.5 as a senior. He also had an interception, and a couple of those, he had 7 forced fumbles as a junior. That's when he finished 10th in the Heisman voting. You don't get much better than that. 2-time All-American. The stats speak for themselves. Jarvis Jones, dog.
I remember that Halloween. I didn't go trick-or-treating. Again, I was raised in a bunch of Knowles, but I was always a Gator, so I remember not going trick-or-treating, watching that game on Halloween, which goes to Atlanta, punched out at the 1-yard line. I will Never forget it, ever. It was a sad day in this rivalry on my side.
And then I'll go to another Heisman. He finished, I think, 7th in Heisman voting as a, I think it was a senior, but he he was kind of like Travis Hunter before Travis Hunter. His senior year, he had 47 catches, 744 yards, and 5 touchdowns. But he also was one of the best lockdown corners of all time. He won the Nagurski Award. He was an All-American. It's Champ Bailey.
Yeah, dog.
When you think of great Georgia defenders, Champ Bailey's up there. Brother Boss Bailey. What great names for the Bailey bro. But Champ Bailey is definitely one you look back and go, he laid the foundation for what a Georgia defender is supposed to be. Laid a foundation for guys, I mean, obviously you had the Deons of the world, but you've also got here.
I didn't realize he played offense at Georgia.
Both sides, yeah.
I mean, I remember him on the Broncos growing up. He was part of those defenses that were elite. But my secondary, I'm going to go Joe Haden. Talk about NFL, my childhood kind of growing up. I mean, he had 10 interceptions in 2007 and 5 in 2009. I think he had 15 in his 3 seasons here. And I know we don't want to focus on the NFL too much, but his longevity in the NFL was through the roof. So Joe Haden, kind of DBU, the University of Florida. So this was the hardest position for me to go with. But my second one, this one is personal. This is probably the only one on here that him and Dante Fowler Jr., both of these guys on those Muschamp defenses that I grew up on. It felt like we had a better chance to score with our defense on the field than we did with our offense in that era. Those TVs behind you, I'll never forget my first ever game in the Swamp. Gators playing Florida State's national championship team with Jameis Winston, Vernon Hargreaves III. Picked him off down this bottom right corner on these TVs behind you. And he was just went to the Bucs, first round pick. And he was part of that Muschamp era that just set the tone for who DBU is here at the University of Florida, because we are DBU.
Look, he's another one. I remember him being a true lockdown corner. And in today's college football, that's so tough. The emphasis on passing and emphasis on great receivers. My next one, I'm going to cheat a little bit because Georgia's got some great DBs, Malachi Starks, and some of those more recent ones, Keely Ringo, Dominic Sanders. The list goes on and on and on. Greg Blue, another great DB. But man, I'm going to go Thomas Davis. Now look, he was a linebacker in the NFL, but at Georgia, he played a little safety. And Thomas Davis is just a smash mouth player. Like, he had 270 some odd tackles at Georgia, half sacks, 3 interceptions. I mean, the dude was just an absolute freak of nature.
Consensus All-American.
Consensus All-American. Just a freak of nature at the college level.
It was sad the way it worked out in the NFL. 3 ACL tears for him, which it's hard. Like, you hate injuries ruining a career for someone that's that talented. Yeah, and look, without the ACL tears, he probably goes down as one of the greatest linebackers in the NFL.
But I'll go Thomas Davis. And then the kicker position.
Let's move to the special teams. I love it.
Kicker's was tougher because Hot Rod is probably the right answer.
Yes,
I'll just say it.
You're not taking him?
But I'm not taking him.
Oh.
I'm going to go with the guy that kind of laid the foundation, not Kevin Butler, who technically laid the foundation, and who laid the foundation for my pick at punter, spoiler alert. But I'm going to go with Billy Bennett. He was on that same 2000 to 2003 time frame. Left Georgia as the greatest kicker to do it there. He has some records up there. But was just an absolute beast of a kicker, Billy Bennett.
Mine, again, it was my childhood growing up. Shout out Caleb Sturgis. Shout out Trey Smack. Shout out Evan McPherson. None of those are my pick at the kicker position at Florida. It's Eddy Piñeiro, who's now with the 49ers, who he's kind of solidified his job there as they were bouncing around. But there was a dental walk-on kicker here for the Gators for a minute. Me and my buddy would say, why can't we just go recruit a 5-star? They're going to start as a freshman. Eddy Piñeiro was that 5-star, came to the University of Florida and was just a dog. I could call it my friend right now and be like, hey, who's that kicker that we loved growing up watching games in the backyard? He would know I'm talking about Eddy Piñeiro. Has to be on my list. Punters, again, Crashaw last year in Denver. Now love watching him kick in Denver Mile High. He hit some boomers. He did here in the Swamp also. I'm not going Tommy Townsend either, even though he's awesome in the NFL. I'm going with his brother. So honorable mention, I think on the graphic, can we put just Townsend's in general? I want both wins. I'm going to go Johnny if I have to narrow it down to one just because he was the first, like you kept saying, laid the groundwork for his brother. So I hear about them, they're the nicest guys. I'm going Johnny Townsend, but if I can get it on the graphic to say Townsend's, the Townsend's are my punter pick.
Yeah, that great picks there. Evan McPherson might have been my
that LSU game still. I mean, I love him. I love what he's done in the NFL, but that LSU game in the fog still just it was the Marco Wilson game, but people still remember Cade York making the kick and Evan McPherson didn't.
Yeah. Over at punter, going Drew Butler. Georgia has a lot of great punters in its history. Brett Thorson had a 75-yarder, I think, against Tennessee last year. It's a line of great punters. But this guy was an All-American at Georgia. I believe he either won the Ray Guy or was a Ray Guy finalist. Averaged 48 yards per punt as a sophomore. Never averaged less than 44 yards after his first season, where he only played 3 games. But pretty much you could lock it in that he was flipping the field for you every time he walked out there. And that's such a dangerous weapon to have on some of these teams. And he was, again, that 2008 to 2011. So kind of the forgotten years after. I mean, he probably had a really good that freshman year with some of the stuff that he had with, I think Stafford was on that group.
I'm interested. Who's manning up your team? Who's the head coach of this all-time Georgia Bulldogs team for you?
There's only 2 potential answers here, and I think you're probably in a very similar boat with Florida. It's either Vince Dooley, who won the national championship in 1980, or it's the guy that's there now. And I'm going to go with the guy that's there now.
Has to be.
Kirby Smart's got 2 national championships. But also, if you just look at the record since he's gotten there, after year 1, pretty much locking you into either the playoffs or New Year's Six Bowl. Probably had a couple different times where he should have been in the playoff, got left out because of an Alabama loss or something along those lines. He has taken the standard at Georgia and completely changed where, a 10-win season's not good. Missing the playoffs at this point is just a bad season for Georgia, and that's not something, growing up, you were excited to see them go to the Sugar Bowl. You were excited to see that. Now I've seen fans when Georgia didn't make the playoff that were upset that they were playing Texas in the Sugar Bowl or Cincinnati in the Sugar Bowl. That was not what it was like growing up on this side of the rivalry, AJ. Yeah,
I mean, in the year that he did lose to Bama in the SEC championship, they snuck in over a Florida State team, which was undefeated. And then Kirby said, we're going to build the culture here, and our whole team's going to play. They didn't have to play more than a half because Florida State didn't play anyone, and we've seen what they've done since. So setting the culture in that game and blowing them out, and I wish both teams just didn't play that game because I don't like either of them. But my coach, I debated this with you before the show. Urban has 2. And everything you said about Spurrier, I just kept saying Urban has 2. Urban has 2. He's the only coach with 2. I talked about this the first time I was ever on the Sports Lab. Is he forgiven? I think it kind of depends who you ask. But the way he left kind of burned some bridges, went to the Jags, had a way to get kind of back into some people's heart here in this area, didn't handle that well. He's got 3 national championships in general, so I want him manning this team, but I don't think I have enough personality on this team because my second tight end that I would have picked, we know about him, and Urban was able to just handle all those guys in that locker room. But I'm going Steve Spurrier. We talked about Spurrier's restaurant. You think of the University of Florida, you don't think of Urban Meyer as much as I think you should because he did win 2 national championships, but I am going to go Steve Spurrier. He's going to have some fun with this offense I put together too.
Yeah, I think to me, AJ, that's the big thing there. And frankly, I want to see Steve Spurrier, the offensive genius, go up against Kirby Smart on the defensive side. Again, this rivalry means so much to so many people. You can't imagine 2 people on either side manning the teams that probably have more disdain for the other side as those 2.
That's part of it.
And I think that's a big part of it because Kirby is not a fan of the University of Florida.
Nope.
Steve Spurrier cannot stand the University of Georgia, and I just think the 2 of them together manning the sidelines against one another will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of fun in here today. I mean, I can't wait for tomorrow. I just get over there. I'm going to head over there right after I get out of here and go enjoy my Halloween over there. The weather's supposed to be perfect tomorrow. It's going to be a fun day, as always, in Jacksonville. The weather's going to be perfect, and we can play a little spoiler to the Bulldogs this weekend. I want nothing more than it because I've never seen a win in my 4.5 years here as a student at Florida. I got one question before we get out of there because I love the chant because you guys blow us out. It seems like every year I've been to the game, and I hear it. It's way too much. Is it what or who's that coming down the track?
It's such a heavily debated thing.
It's who's that coming down the track.
It's got to be. It's the Mean Machine. in the red and black. But look, here's the thing. It's going to be a great weekend. It's going to be great to watch these two teams battle it out on the field. I do think that Florida has a chance to go and pull the upset. And so I'm excited to talk Monday with you, AJ.
Don't text me Saturday. I already said don't text me Saturday. It's called the nickname of the game for it. So I'm going to enjoy myself at the game, and I don't want to be texting you on Saturday unless if we win, you'll probably get a text, but
there it is.
No, I can't say don't text me and then text you. So I won't. Let's have some fun this weekend. Let's enjoy the game in general, and hopefully it's just a good game, and hopefully we play spoiler. But I know my all-time team takes your all-time team down. So I'm the real winner this weekend.
Absolutely, AJ. Well, I'm glad to have you on here on Sports Lab Overtime, and we'll be back soon. Thanks again for joining us.